Malcolm was a small-time hustler who was able to reform himself with racial dignity and pride. He became an active follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was also a child of the Marcus Garvey movement. Malcolm sparked the growth of the Nation of Islam and fought for human rights for black people. This is the story of Malcolm X, our black shining prince.
Malcolm Little was born on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska, to Earl and Louise Little. Earl Little moved his family from Omaha shortly after Malcolm turned 1 year old. The racial tension was so thick that the KKK burnt their house down.
Earl Little thought that the move to Lansing, Michigan would be a great move. Even though they settled in a small town, the KKK was highly populated there. The surrounding white neighbors were not happy with their new residents.
The white residents got together to have the Little family evicted. Although Earl Little was instructed to leave, he disobeyed strict orders and remained in his home with his family. His decision outraged the white residents, and the Little's home was later burnt down. Earl and Louise Little rushed to get their family out of the burning house. The white residents figured they would get the Little's family out of the neighborhood for good. Earl and Louise Little watched their home burn to the ground, and no help from the fire station came to their aid.
Earl reported the incident and accused the KKK. However, Earl Little ended up being charged with arson and setting his own home on fire. After an investigation, the charges against Earl Little were dropped.
Earl Little was a proud, independent, strong man. He followed the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Earl was a firm believer that blacks should organize themselves and work together to bring about an upliftment of the black race. Earl and Louise pride themselves as Garveyites.
September 1931. Earl Little had to go to town to take care of some business. Louise Little had a premonition that something bad was going to happen to her husband, so she pleaded for Earl not to take the trip to town. Earl went anyhow, and later on that evening, Earl was found cut in half by a streetcar. The incident was ruled an accident by the town police. Although the police report suggested an accident, the Little family felt that Earl was pushed under the wheels of the streetcar.
The Little family was devastated by the news. The burden of caring for the family rested on Louise Little's shoulders. Louise didn't have the strong discipline that Earl had. Louise began to feel the inability to care and financially support her family. As time went by, all the responsibility took a toll on her. Louise reached her breaking point when she was diagnosed with mental health issues and sent to Kalamazoo State Hospital. Her stay at this hospital would last 26 years.
The separation of their mother broke up the Little family. Malcolm's siblings went to different foster homes, and Malcolm moved to an all-white community. Malcolm attended an all-white school, and he excelled in all of his classes. Malcolm was so popular amongst his peers that he was voted class president.
Malcolm left school and went to Roxburgh, Massachusetts. Malcolm was fascinated with the fast life. Malcolm would wear a zoot suit and a wide-brimmed hat. This new look was a true hit with the girls.
In 1942, he moved to Harlem, New York. Malcolm had his hands in a lot of illegal activities. He traveled back to Boston and organized a gang to rob rich families. Malcolm's slick hustling caught up to him when he was tried to pawn a watch that was stolen. The 3 policemen arrested him, and his entire operation team was taken down.
The fact that the two black men were with three white women upset the court. The white women testified that Malcolm forced them to participate in the burglaries. Malcolm and Malcolm Jarvis were sentenced to 8 to 10 years maximum. The court wanted the women to testify that Malcolm and Malcolm Jarvis raped them, but the white women refused.
In 1946, Malcolm kept his hustling game going. Malcolm was so disappointed with his life that he questioned the existence of God. His cellmates were so disturbed by his behavior that they referred to him as Satan. Despite his behavior, Malcolm was encouraged by an older inmate to start reading and take English courses. After a year, Malcolm's siblings wrote to him and informed Malcolm about a religion that could help him. This religion was quite different than any other religion because it taught that black people were the original people and God was black. Malcolm continued to receive letters from his siblings, but one in particular from his brother told him that if he believed in Allah, he would get out of prison and will be a better man.
Malcolm later wrote to Elijah Muhammad, and to Malcolm's surprise, Elijah Muhammad wrote back. Elijah Muhammad gave Malcolm the encouragement to turn his life around.
Malcolm began to read more and more books, and he studied daily. Malcolm accumulated a plethora of genres under his belt. Through his readings, Malcolm discovered that the real devil is the white man.
The last step for entry into the religion was for Malcolm to submit to Allah. Malcolm had reservations at first, and after about a week, Malcolm finally bowed in prayer and submitted himself to Allah. After 6.5 years in prison, Malcolm was released and he was officially accepted into the nation after 1 month of his release from prison.
Malcolm impressed Elijah Muhammad because he was tall, well-spoken, courageous, knowledgeable, and full of fire. Malcolm increased the membership from hundreds to thousands, which landed Malcolm the highest title as the Minister of Harlem Temple No. 7.
White people were not allowed in the mosque. Obedience and strict rules were highly enforced in the mosque. Schools were implemented and children were taught math, reading, history, science, and Arabic.
Fruit of Islam, FOI, were trained to protect the temple and punish any members who betrayed the messenger. They were very disciplined and very well dressed.
Malcolm created the Muhammad Speaks newspaper to get the word out about the nation.
Malcolm worked countless hours for the Nation of Islam. In the midst of his commitment and loyalty with the nation, Malcolm requested approval to marry Betty Shabazz in 1958. Due to the demands of his ministry, Malcolm had little time for his wife and family.
Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad had a father and son relationship.
A member of the nation was brutally beaten by the police. Rumors spread that the Muslim died, and Malcolm commanded his people to the streets. Hundreds followed Malcolm to the 28th Police Precinct. Malcolm demanded that Hinton receive medical treatment, and the police gave in and sent Hinton to the hospital. The angry crowd waited patiently outside. The sergeant tried to disperse the crowd, but the crowd didn't budge. Malcolm told the sergeant that he would disperse the crowd. Malcolm waved his hand, and the crowd dispersed. This was the mark when Malcolm got the attention of police and city officials. Malcolm's power and influence was threatening, and the police commissioner thought it was too much power for one individual to have. Malcolm later sued the New York City Police Department and won the biggest police brutality settlement.
The nation was at its peak in the early 60s. They had restaurants, grocery stores, and newspapers. Malcolm was getting a lot of publicity on TV, and he represented the nation very well.
Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad disagreed on the retaliation method on behalf of Ronald Stokes, the secretary for the Los Angeles Muslim Mosque. Stokes was killed by white policemen, and Malcolm always believed that Muslims should never back down. But Elijah Muhammad didn't want more black people to get killed if they retaliated violently.
Malcolm visited Elijah Muhammad's home one afternoon. Malcolm walked through the side door and saw 3 teenage girls banging and yelling that they needed support for their children.
Malcolm was confused by what he just witnessed. The rumors that Malcolm heard for years came to fruition when he saw the girls pleading for money and food to take care of their children. Elijah was accused of fathering 8 children by 6 of his secretaries. Malcolm spoke to Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace, to confirm what he just witnessed. Wallace confirmed that Elijah Muhammad fathered these children.
Malcolm's spirits were destroyed because his spiritual father wasn't as divine as he initially thought. Division began to develop into the nation, but the ultimate test came when President Kennedy was assassinated. Elijah Muhammad warned his people to refrain from making any derogatory comments about the president because he was loved by many.
Malcolm was asked about the assassination by the media, and Malcolm responded that the chickens have come home to roost. Elijah Muhammad put out a letter stating that the comment by Malcolm was of his own and not of the Nation of Islam. Elijah later suspended Malcolm for 90 days. He was not allowed to give any speeches or have contact with the press.
The silencing of Malcolm permanently damaged their once father and son relationship. While in isolation, Malcolm traveled and visited his close friend, who was a heavyweight boxer, Cassius Clay. Malcolm wanted Clay to join the nation, but no one from the nation invited Clay until he won the heavyweight championship. The nation bypassed Malcolm and recruited Cassius Clay into the nation and changed his name to Muhammad Ali.
The nation turned their back on Malcolm. In 1964, Malcolm left the nation and formed his own organization, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Malcolm had a large group of loyal followers who left the nation when he left. This started a war between Malcolm and the nation.
Malcolm performed a Hajj, also known as a pilgrimage, which is required of all Muslims to visit the holy city of Mecca. Malcolm broke bread, prayed, and formed brotherhood with all races of people, blue-eyed blondes to black Africans.
Malcolm felt that white men in America were venomous, whereas the white men on his pilgrimage didn't embrace white supremacist ideologies. After his pilgrimage, Malcolm went to Africa for 3 weeks. Malcolm returned to New York. Upon his return, the Nation of Islam stepped up their attacks and filed eviction papers on Malcolm's home.
Malcolm began airing Elijah Muhammad's personal business to the media, which was a death sentence on Malcolm's life. Malcolm started to receive death threats at his home. Malcolm was also closely watched by the FBI.
Malcolm wanted to form a coalition with blacks in Africa and blacks in America. Malcolm therefore traveled back to Africa and met with many heads of states. During his stay in Nigeria, he was given the name Omowale, which means the sun returns.
Malcolm returned to the U.S. and finally dealt with something that bothered him for quite some time. He and his brother finally decided to release his mother from Kalamazoo Hospital.
Malcolm felt that the ongoing threats were bigger than the Nation of Islam. Malcolm and his family were asleep at home when his house was firebombed. No one was injured, but this act devastated Malcolm and his family. Malcolm was outraged because his children and his wife were also in danger.
Malcolm was convinced that the threats and bombing was from direct orders of Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad had the power to end the war between Malcolm and the nation, but Mr. Muhammad refused to. The plot to kill Malcolm was to come very soon.
Malcolm knew his days were numbered. Malcolm planned to reveal the names of the perpetrators at his lecture at the Audubon Ballroom.
I was born by the river in her little tent, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there.
The climate in the Audubon Theater was eerie. Malcolm arrived late, which was very rare for him. Malcolm greeted the crowd, and then several men rushed to the stage with their guns and unloaded on him.
A change gon' come, oh yes it will. I go to the movies, then I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long,
at this final hour, in this quiet place,
long time
Harlem has
coming,
come to
but I
bid
know
farewell to one of its bright, therefore most fitting that we meet once again in
oh,
Harlem.
yes it will. Then I go to my brother, and I said, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will.